What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And this one is some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 2 deadline. So I'm going to go through the latest press conference information, answer some of your questions, and quickly talk about my team as well. Before we get into that, I wanted to talk about Sleeper, who I've partnered with for this season. It's a football and fantasy football app that's completely free, and you can download it using the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen. So they've got a free draft fantasy Premier League game with tons of customization, which you can check out. They've also got a pick'em game where all you have to do is predict the results of each Premier League game every weekend. And I ran a competition in the Let's Talk FPL League last week for Game Week 1, and 7 of you predicted 9 out of the 10 results correctly. So I'm going to do a draw after the Game Week 2 deadline stream tomorrow to pick the winner of a Premier League shirt of your choice. It's not too late to join the Let's Talk FPL League by using that link in the description below, and I'm going to be running another competition which is completely free with prizes on offer for Game Weeks 2 and 3 combined. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to make your picks on the app. So for Brighton versus Man United, I've got a feeling Man United won't get the win, but I've got to go with my heart there rather than my head. So I'm going to go for Man United, Palace to beat West Ham, Fulham to beat Leicester as well, and I think everyone expects Man City to beat Ipswich. Southampton Forest is an interesting one to call because Southampton did all right against Newcastle in Game Week 1 despite not winning. So I'm going to go for them to get their first home win of the season in Game Week 2. Spurs to beat Everton. Arsenal to beat Villa, probably, although Villa did really well against Arsenal last year, so I might have that one wrong. A draw between Bournemouth and Newcastle. Chelsea to beat Wolves. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to put a Wolves win. I think Chelsea might struggle early on in the season. And then Liverpool to beat Brentford. That is it. Pick submitted, completely free. Loads of other great stuff on the app as well. Get it downloaded today using that link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. So we've got to start with what Arne Slot said about Quansah in his press conference today. He was asked about the substitution against Ipswich. He said, I spoke to him immediately after the game and on Sunday. On Tuesday, he picked up a bit of an injury, so let's see if he can train today. I just said he lost 1 or 2 important duels. So for anyone that was hoping that he would play against Brentford, I feel like talk of an injury and whether or not he can even train today on Friday is really the final nail in the coffin. I just think it's going to be Konate, and we need to just accept that at this point. If you held on to Quansah, this is obviously unfortunate, but nothing much has really changed. Because I think most of us would have predicted Konate to start anyway. You just don't put Quansah in your 11, he goes on your bench instead. As long as you've got 3 playing defenders, you're not in that much of a worse position than you were before this press conference. And if you haven't got money in the bank, at 4.4 million, you can only go to a 4 million defender. So even if you've got like an Ipswich defender against Man City away or Quansah at Aston Villa against Arsenal at home, I would just play them rather than take a hit to get a different defender in and just reassess in Game Week 3 with hopefully 2 free transfers. So it's an annoying situation for sure, but if you've already taken that price drop, I think you just go with whatever your original plan was. If you're really stuck for defenders, you've got a bunch of other injuries as well, then and no money in the bank, and you're going to go for a 4 million defender. Long term, a lot of people are talking about Greaves at Ipswich as maybe one of the best options. I don't see a huge amount of points against City away, but it's Fulham at home in 3, Southampton away in 5, even Villa at home in 6. It wouldn't be the end of the world if you had to play him in that, or Everton at home in 8. I wouldn't be expecting clean sheets, but if you had to play him, bit of a threat from set pieces as well, and Leicester at home in 10. So Ipswich have probably got better fixtures over the next 8 to 10 game weeks than the other newly promoted sides. But if you really wanted someone this week, Harwood Bellis at Southampton has got Forest at home and Ipswich at home in Game Week 5 as well, and Leicester at home in 8. So it depends on when you might need him, but if you want to play him this week, that's the kind of players that I would be looking at. And they both should be pretty safe for minutes. I don't know if I would 100% guarantee it. They're definitely going to be better than Barco. If you have got money to go up to a 4.5 or a 5 million defender, you're looking at Munoz at Palace, Robinson as well. Rico Lewis is a question about later. I'll talk about that then. But yeah, I think the injury is annoying. I've seen some people speculate that maybe Slot's just saying that to not have to say that he's dropped Quansah, essentially. Either way, I don't see him starting, but essentially not much has changed, so I don't think he was going to start anyway. So you just put him on your bench, put it down to frustration, a mistake, whatever you want, reassessing Game Week 3. So for Spurs, there's good news and bad news depending on who you own. Ange Postecoglou was asked about Solanke, who wasn't pictured in training, and he said Dom picked up a knock in the last game. It's an ankle injury, not serious. He got through the game, but it flared up the day after, so he will miss tomorrow. So Dominic Solanke is out of Everton at home, but hopefully he will be back from game week 3 onwards. So after Everton, it's Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, and Brentford at home, which isn't awful, but not great either, especially when you've got to play Arsenal. Although, to be honest, I could see goals in that game. So whether or not you need to sell Solanke depends on how your squad is set up. If you've got a really good 8th attacker, you could play them instead and bench Solanke and then reassess from game week 3 onwards. If you've got a good 4th defender, you could do the same thing as well. But if you've set yourself up in a way that you need to play Solanke every week and benching him is just not an option, then you're going to have to get rid of him. Who to buy is an interesting dilemma. I guess it depends if you've got any money in the bank, because Havertz has now gone up to 8.1 million. So to get him, you'd have to have banked 1 million before the season started, which most people won't have done. Otherwise, you're looking at kind of 7.5 or below. But I think in terms of like Nicholas Jackson, Minteh, they're probably not players to buy. Obviously, lots going on with Tony and Brentford at the moment. You can't go and buy any Liverpool, Man United forwards. The options are really slim. Like he did go on to say later that Richarlison is fit to start if required, but they could play Kulusevski as the 9, and obviously Richarlison's not a long-term option. So I think you're actually kind of stuck for. I'd almost go all the way down to like a Menez at 6 million. Chris Wood I would probably ignore because Forest are trying to buy a new forward. Menez has got Leicester at home, Ipswich away, West Ham at home, and Newcastle at home. I'm pretty sure he's going to be first choice for those games and start. He might come off early for Raul Jimenez, that's a possibility, but you should get starts, and that will give you money for next week as well. Evan Nielsen for Bournemouth is available for this weekend, but Newcastle at home, Everton away, Chelsea at home, Liverpool away, I just wouldn't go there right now. So I think it's really Menez. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else to go for 7.5 or under, and I don't think there really is. Like Wissa maybe at Brentford, but if Tony stays, Tony and Mbeumo will be nailed on, and you've only got one more spot, and Brentford have got quite a few attackers, so I'm not sure I'd want to go there. Plus it's Liverpool away, City away, and Spurs away in 3 of the next 4. It's really, I feel like there's someone I'm missing, but I'm not sure I am. Like Nicholas Jackson, maybe, because Chelsea's fixtures are pretty good, but João Felix is there now. He could play as number 9, and Nkunku can play there as well. I honestly think if you've got no money to spend, you'll go into Menez. If you think I'm missing someone, let me know in the comments below. Like, I wouldn't go for João Pedro if you don't already own him. United at home is okay, but then it's Arsenal away, and who knows long-term about his minutes. I think it's Menez, or you hold him and you reassess in game week 3. And obviously, if he's back, you can just play him against Newcastle away. It's really not the end of the world. So that's Solanke. Ange Postecoglou was asked about Bentancur as well. He said, absolutely not. We respect the concussion protocols. Any head injury will make us more cautious from my perspective, but he is really well, feels good, and has done our tests. So that's good news on Bentancur, of course. Glad that he's there's no major issues there. He said, we will take our time with him until he is out there again. So that is a bit of a blow for Spurs if he's not going to be available, but obviously from an FPL point of view, not a major concern. And then the big news is Pedro Porro is fine. So if you're worried about him, he's available presumably, and when he's available, he always starts. So I wouldn't have any concerns about that. I'm pretty sure he's going to be in the 11 against Everton at home. So my transfer of Quansah to Robinson looks a bit better now that Quansah has apparently picked up an injury and I can play him ahead of Quansah. But obviously Porro was fine, so I didn't actually have to make a transfer to get 3 defenders out, but I still think it was a good decision. I'll talk about that later. So Solanke out for Everton. Porro is fine. Bentancur sounds like he's much better than maybe people might have expected, but not necessarily available to start. Richarlison is fit to start. Whether or not he will remains to be seen. So after I finished recording that Spurs section, I went back and looked at the forwards for 7.5 million or below, just to make sure I haven't missed anyone. And I don't think I really have. Like Fulkrug at West Ham has Palace away, Man City at home, Fulham away, Chelsea home. It's not a great next 4. Maybe not a complete guarantee that he would start either, although he'll soon be in the team as first choice. Jackson with Chelsea's fixtures maybe, and Menez as I mentioned. Maybe I wrote off Minteh a little bit too quickly. I kind of brushed past him when I was talking about the options. He did start in game week 1, which I think is pretty encouraging given that he was away for the Olympics with France before the season started, but only played 45. So maybe they're just being a bit careful with the amount of minutes he's played during pre-season. But he does have good fixtures. West Ham at home, Chelsea away, Leicester at home, Man United at home, next 4 is not bad. And his goal record last year was pretty good. I still personally think he's a little bit overpriced at 7.5. I don't think he should have been that much. And also, there were rumours like a week or 2 ago that he wants to leave. He wants to play Champions League football. And as we've seen recently, Crystal Palace are not against selling players, even though the end of last season went really well. So maybe I've written off Minteh too quickly, but it still doesn't seem like. But I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of a Solanke owner. Selling to Minteh just doesn't sound great. I guess the main worry is, what if Solanke does miss Newcastle away as well? You then miss 2 games total, and he's coming back for the Arsenal game. I think I would sell to Menez and bank the money. Maybe Minteh, maybe Jackson, but I think my initial instincts are probably correct. Menez is the one. If you've already got him, it's really tricky. Maybe you do just take a punt on Jackson or Minteh. Adam Armstrong, that's the guy that I've been missing. 5.5 million. 3 of the next 4 games are at home. Forest at home, Brentford away, Man United at home, Ipswich at home. Releases funds to use for another move next week as well. Pretty much nailed on. Not going to get you a huge amount of returns, you would imagine. But for 5.5 million, he doesn't necessarily have to. So thank you to everyone that pointed this out on Twitter, that Adam Armstrong was also a consideration. I think that is it. I don't think I've missed anyone else, although I probably have. So there's been a little bit of talk about Kieran Trippier at Newcastle. David Ornstein tweeted the other day to say that Trippier wants to leave Newcastle United before the summer market closes, and Everton are among the suitors for him. 33-year-old fullback, contracted until 2026, but seeking regular first-team action elsewhere. So it looks like Trippier has just accepted that Livramento is ahead of him in the pecking order, and that if he wants to play regularly, he's going to have to go elsewhere. Eddie Howe was asked about it in the press conference today. He said, it's business as usual. Trippier has trained really well this week. I'm surprised at a lot of the stories that have come out. He continues to be really valued by us. My wish is that he stays, but I can never answer with absolute certainty. I mean, we shouldn't expect anything else from, not even Eddie Howe, from any manager, right? They're not going to say, yes, we want rid of him. Because one, that devalues the player's transfer fee potential. And also, it's just not a very nice thing to say. I think the fact that Ornstein has tweeted about it kind of tells us that Trippier is likely to go. If you've got him, he's just a sell for me. Because even if he ended up at Everton, do you really want a 6 million defender for Everton? Probably not. So Trippier, someone to sell if you own him. It does make Livramento a much better option. And you could probably argue that he's now the best 4.5. Like, if you could set up a scenario where every single 4.5 million defender stays fit, that's likely to regularly play. Like, I don't think Rico Lewis would, for example, but everyone else, till the end of the season, Livramento will do really well. But I still think the fixtures in the short and medium term just mean we don't have to rush out to buy him. Like, next 4 fixtures, Bournemouth away, Spurs at home, Wolves away, Fulham away. Maybe Newcastle get 1 or 2 clean sheets in there, but so many away games. And even the Spurs at home game is obviously not easy. Then it's City at home, Everton away, Brighton at home, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home. There's just never going to be a rush to bring Livramento in. Maybe if you end up wildcarding in like 4 or 6 and you want him as a long-term option, great. But it's quite a while until Newcastle have like a really good run of fixtures. In fact, I'm looking down the fixture list here. I'm not even sure I really see one. I guess here, when you've got like Forest away, West Ham at home, Palace away, and Liverpool at home is not great, but then it's Brentford away. But it's still 3 away games in 5. Like game week 16, Leicester at home, Ipswich away, 17 is not bad. But then it's Villa at home, United away, Spurs away. I get the run here, and we're going way too far in the future now for sure. Like maybe game week 21 onwards. What I'm trying to say is Livramento is now very good, I would say, but absolutely should not be rushing out to buy. And I'm not even sure he's the best 4.5 to buy this week for Quansah, for example. I still quite like Robinson with Leicester at home, Ipswich away. You could probably make an argument that Livramento is maybe a little bit stronger now. So there's been a lot of questions about whether or not Nkunku will start against Wolves in game week 2. And the reason for that is he started for Chelsea last night in their Europa Conference League playoff match against Sivert in what was a heavily rotated team from the Man City game. In fact, the only 2 players to play in both, or to start in both, were Caicedo and Nkunku. So that's not necessarily ideal. You can look at it in 2 ways, right? The start, not great, and that does put doubts about whether he's going to play against Wolves, but he only played 57 minutes, so he came off before the 60th minute. It's not like he's played a full 90, and because of that, if I had to put my own money on it, I think he will start against Wolves, but it is not ideal that he keeps getting subbed. I say keeps, right? It's happened in the first 2 games, but he has been subbed before the 60th minute against both Man City and Wolves, and if that continues, he's just not a good FPL pick. So I think we've got to start planting the seed that Nkunku might be a mistake. right? But does that mean you need to knee-jerk and get rid of him this week? Absolutely not. If you're confident that he starts against Wolves, I think you give him another chance and then decide what to do in game week 3. Personally, I don't think there's a huge amount of 6.5 million or below midfielders that are a necessity to bring in this week. Even if you like someone like Mitoma, and Man United at home is not a terrible fixture, he then runs into Arsenal away in game week 3. Whereas if Nkunku starts against Wolves and maybe gets 65 plus and does well, then all of a sudden you've got Crystal Palace at home in game week 3, and you're going to want to play him in that as well. Let's say he gets another 70 minutes plus, well then it's Bournemouth away. All of a sudden he looks like a much better pick. So I'm not trying to sit here with, what would the kids say, like copium, right? I'm not saying that I can guarantee that Nkunku is a great pick, but I don't think last night, because it was 57 minutes, has made me panic about a start against Wolves. If he got like 70, 75 plus, then I'd be concerned. But I think they're just trying to build up his match fitness. He said himself, part of the goal this season is just to stay fit. And he is someone that needs minutes. And it's interesting because we talk about him as though he's an injury-prone player. And obviously last year he had a huge amount of issues. But before that, he hasn't suffered a massive amount of injuries. So hopefully the early sub against City and then playing him again midweek was just to build up the fitness. But maybe I'm just trying to say, maybe I'm saying that just to try and make myself feel better. But if I had to guess, I think he starts against Wolves, and I think that's enough reason to probably keep him. If you're in a situation where maybe you've got 0.5 in the bank, you can go to Eze. I definitely think Eze is a better pick. And if you're confident that Nkunku's not going to be good long term, then maybe you can make that move. But in nearly all cases, I'd rather save the transfer. If you've got a benching dilemma, like I've seen some people say João Pedro versus Nkunku, for example, and they're both great, like you think they're both really good options for game week 2, I'd probably go for the safer pick. Like João Pedro is almost certainly going to start, I would say, and he got 80 minutes in the first game and he's on penalties. You could probably argue he's a better option than Nkunku this week. But for everyone else, if you're sat like me with like Morgan Rogers against Arsenal, I'm definitely taking the gamble that Nkunku plays again. If he doesn't, then we know he's someone we've got to deal with and get rid of in game week 3. But I'd rather get another week's worth of information and a decent enough fixture to see what is likely to happen in the future. So since I recorded that bit about Nkunku, some embargo quotes have come out from Maresca after last night's game about Pedro Neto and João Felix. He also said, by the way, that Sanchez is his #1 goalkeeper and Jorgensen's going to play in the Cups. But I think at this point you've probably already made your goalkeeper decision. So on Pedro Neto, he said he last played 90 minutes in February, playing 65 or 60 minutes against Servette. To give him another game on Sunday, which is the Wolves match, is probably too early, but we'll see. So that seems unlikely that Pedro Neto will start, which is good for Nkunku. He also obviously played close to 60 minutes as well, but he has played 90 minutes more recently, albeit in pre-season. And then on João Felix, he said in terms of knowing the way we want to play, João is probably not there yet. But in terms of physicality, I think he is ready. But overall, I think he can play. So there is a chance that João Felix will start, more so than Pedro Neto. But I think overall, it still looks quite good for an Nkunku start again against Wolves because he has played 90 minutes in pre-season and he has been building that fitness up. It's worth noting again that Nkunku did play some of the most amount of minutes in that Chelsea squad in pre-season. So he is keeping that fitness up, albeit the last 2 matches, it's not quite at 60 minutes. So these quotes haven't really changed my mind. I think Nkunku will start. There is some risk there, but still worth playing and not transferring out in most cases, I would say. For anyone that took a punt on Nkunku Minutes in game week 1, it does look like he's going to be available for the Man United game. Hertzler said this: there are clear rules we have to go through. It's also important for the health of the player that we follow the rules of the Premier League, but he will be available. So he should be in that squad for Brighton in game week 2. I don't think anyone could guarantee a start from him because they do have a lot of options now in that squad that can play in the attacking roles. But if I had him, I certainly wouldn't be panicking and I wouldn't be selling him either. If you've got someone as an 8th attacker with a good fixture as well this week, you can maybe play them instead just to be sure of the start. But I think for most squads, if I had Minteh, I'd probably just put him in the 11. So he is available. We already knew the game week 3 fixture against Arsenal away wasn't ideal anyway. But he hasn't got a long-term injury. It was a concussion substitution, and he is available. So hopefully, if he continues to play well, he'll remain in that 11. And then you've got that Ipswich at home game week 4, Forest at home game week 5 fixture. So if you've got him, I'd keep him. I'd probably play him in most cases unless you've got a really great 8th attacker. Like if it was Rodgers, for example, again, like I've got, I'd probably just play Minteh and hope for the best. All right, let's get into some of your questions. So if you have a Salah-only team, would you consider a hit for Haaland? The difference in captaincy feels huge this week. So I think most people would agree that on paper, Haaland is the better captain. Ipswich at home, really good fixture. But Brentford at home is pretty decent for Salah as well. You know he's going to start. He's on penalties. He'll get 90 minutes again almost certainly, or close to. And Brentford aren't exactly an elite defence. So it almost feels like this is the only week in the first kind of 5 to 6 that you've really got to get through without Haaland and hope that the damage isn't too much. Like even if Haaland gets a hat-trick, there's nothing to say that Salah can't go and get his own 10-pointer. You're already probably ahead in most cases from game week 1 anyway. It's just not worth a hit. I really don't think it is. If you've got a Salah-only team, you've already got a better distribution of funds, more money to spend. I don't know why you would change that. I get that it's not fun going through a week like this without Haaland, but you knew before the game started that Ipswich at home was coming and that Haaland was going to be a great option. You've taken that, I mean, you could call it a risk if you want to, or just call it a decision to not have Haaland. That's fine. Stick with the plan. I'm sure from game week 3 onwards, it'll feel much better to stick with to have your Salah-only team and not have taken that hit. So what are your thoughts on Den Berg as a potential 4 million starting defender for Brentford? Could be a cheap enabler for our squads. Brentford's fixtures turned from game week 6. So if you've missed this, they've signed Sepp Den Berg from Liverpool and he's only 4 million. So there is definitely potential there. The beauty is, as you've put in the question, the fixtures really turn from game week 6. So before that, we probably don't need to worry too much. So they've got Liverpool away this week. Southampton at home in 3 is pretty good. Then it's City away and Spurs away. I don't really see too many clean sheets over the next 4 fixtures. And if you really need someone this week as your Quansah transfer, you're probably not going to bring in someone with Liverpool away anyway. You're going to go for that Harwood Bellis or maybe even Greaves as a long-term pick if that's who you really want. So I don't think there's any need to rush into him. If he plays regularly over the next 3 to 4 weeks, then yes, possibly from game week 6 onwards, West Ham at home, Wolves at home, Man United away, Ipswich at home, Fulham away, Bournemouth at home. That looks really nice. Would I be prepared to go for him as like a 3rd or 4th defender to save some money? I'm not sure. I think it might be a case that he would just become my 5th defender at 4 million that I can use when I need him. I'm not sure I'm prepared to say he should go higher than that right now because Brentford do have a few centre-backs like Pinnock's there, Collins, Ben-Mee as well. It's not a guarantee that Den Berg goes straight in. I know people will say, well, it's quite a big fee. Why would they not play him? But at Liverpool, he was never going to get a go ahead of like Van Dijk, Konate, Quansah. At Brentford, there's maybe more of a chance of breaking in, but it doesn't mean it's straight away. So wait and see, absolutely. We've got another 4 fixtures before game week 6, when I know a lot of people are wildcarding, but it's also before Brentford's fixtures turn. He could be great. I don't think there's any need to rush into it. So with the return of Gündoğan to Man City, which midfielder will he affect the most and who would you consider a safe pick? Now, I don't think that Gündoğan's been brought back to Man City to necessarily play week in, week out, but he can cover pretty much every position centrally. So even if Rodri was out, I think he could play deep as a number 8, number 10, even as a number 9, and he's played plenty under Pep before, and he knows him really well. So he will get minutes. I just don't think he's going to go straight into the 11 as a regular pick. But it does mean that Pep has more options now to rest players, right? Maybe around European matches and stuff like that. Perhaps someone like Kevin De Bruyne will be managed a bit more than he has been in previous seasons. As always with Man City, there's a lot of questions and not necessarily a huge amount of answers. So if you want me to name a safe attacker, I think it's Haaland, and I think that is it right now. Now, before the season started, and if England hadn't got to the final in the Euros, I would have probably said that Foden was pretty safe and that he'll get the most minutes for all their midfielders. And I still think the minutes thing is probably true. From now until the end of the season, Foden will probably be right up there in terms of the amount of games and minutes that he plays. But can I say right now he's a safe pick after not starting in game week 1? Not necessarily. And if you do play Foden, is he going to be on the right or is he going to be central? And if he's central, will it be Bernardo that goes to the right? Again, it's just lots of questions with Man City. I think if I had to guess right now, it'd probably be Doku on the left, Bernardo and De Bruyne central again, and then probably Foden on the right, and Gündoğan won't even play. But longer term, who knows? Like, who knows how Pep is going to set up? If you want to punt this week, it's probably Doku. Is he a good long-term pick? Who knows, right? Grealish could get in at some point. So I think the only safe attacker is Haaland. I'm not sure there is a safe midfielder. Not if you're asking me for one that's going to play the next 4 to 5 games. Presumably, that player will end up being Foden, and it might be that he starts against Ipswich and just stays in the team. But I'm not even sure I'd be willing to guarantee that right now. So safe pick is not safe is not a word I would use for many Man City attackers. So let's stick with the Man City questions. Could Rico Lewis keep his place until after the international break? What is the Kyle Walker situation? So could he keep his place? Yes. Will he? Who knows? That has to be the honest answer. If I was putting together a predicted 11 for City against Ipswich at home, Rico Lewis would be in that team. And obviously there is potential for a big haul there, especially if he plays similarly to how he did against Chelsea, getting so far advanced. But could I then guarantee that he will also play against West Ham away in game week 3? Definitely not. And then after the international break, who knows, right? That's game week 4 onwards. The thing with Kyle Walker is I don't think he got any minutes in the first game. Let me just double check here. But he was on the bench. So he was available to play if needed. And he will come back into the team at some point. The reports and rumours going around are that teams are interested in Walker, mostly Saudi Arabia, I believe, but he doesn't want to go and City don't really want to sell. So it's pretty likely that Kyle Walker will still be at Man City once the transfer window closes. I just don't see a situation where he's just not playing. And look, Rico Lewis could get enough games at 4.5 where he's still a really good value option, even if Kyle Walker plays some of the matches as well. But you're always going to be stuck in that position of not knowing whether he's going to start. So I do not hate a punt on Rico Lewis for Ipswich at home, hoping that he also plays game week 3. But I think you've got to bring him in knowing it's a risk and that it's a short-term move. I mean, ideally, of course, he would just keep his place forever, but I don't think anyone can guarantee that. So I'd maybe give you like a 65-70% of surety that he'll start against Ipswich, but even that might be too high. So how valid is the strategy of rolling transfers to try and get to 5? It's like a mini wildcard if you can, but is it worth not making transfers when you have a full team and are potentially missing out on form players or good fixtures for the sake of it? Essentially, this is the short answer. If you need to make a transfer, make it. And that's it, right? You don't have to get to 5 free transfers. Most people are not going to do it all season. And for the most part, you're right. There probably is a transfer you can make that's going to get you more points before you get anywhere near to banking 5 transfers. Essentially, I feel like we shouldn't really be playing FPL any different to previous seasons. You pick a team and transfers for players that hopefully you know are going to play with good stats and good fixtures. And obviously, sometimes you're going to get injuries and suspensions. Those things can happen. But that's how you're picking your players. And then if there's a transfer you can make that's going to gain you more points, you make it. If not, you roll. The only difference this season is if you've got 2 free transfers and nothing else to do, instead of forcing yourself to make a transfer, you just roll instead. So for me, actually, the more I think about this, and maybe I would say this because I've had to do Quansah to Robinson already this week in game week 2, but the more I think about it, it's exactly the same as last season, just that if you get 2 free transfers and don't have anything to do, you can roll instead of having to make one. So the chances of most of us getting to 5 transfers, very unlikely. If you need to make a move, just do it. So I think my team is pretty set for game week 2 now. I've got Henderson in goal against West Ham at home. Back 3 is Pedro Porro against Everton at home, Robinson against Leicester at home, and Trent Alexander-Arnold against Brentford at home. Obviously, we now know that Porro is fine, so that yellow flag should be removed. Either way, I'm definitely going to play him. Then it's Eze West Ham at home, Fernandez Brighton away, Saka Villa away, and Nkunku Wolves away. Again, I think there's a good chance that Nkunku will start. And I don't really want to play Rodgers against Arsenal at home instead. I thought Rodgers played really well in game week 1, and he may well get chances, but Arsenal defence is difficult. If he had an easier fixture, maybe I'd consider it, but I'm going to play Nkunku. And look, maybe someone like Bruno Fernandes needs to go long term, but it's certainly not worth a hit. So none of those players go in. Haaland captain. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to triple captain. I'm going to go for that double game week dream. I acknowledge that we may have 3 chips to use in just 2 double game weeks, but anything can happen later on in the season. Isak Bournemouth away, and then João Pedro, Man United at home. Let's see how many minutes he gets. Let's see how many minutes the likes of Rutter gets, etc. But again, no need to do anything drastic. Get another week's worth of information and then decide. So Barco is just going to sit 5th on my bench until I get into a position where I got a ton of free transfers, or more likely when I wildcard, and then Quansah and Rodgers are available for the good fixtures Villa have from game week 3 onwards. I don't really have any future plans in terms of transfers. I'm going to see what happens this week, then make my decisions. I don't have any plans about wildcard, but I'm open to using it early. Let's see what happens in game week 2, and then we'll go from there. If you haven't already checked out Sleeper, make sure to join the Let's Talk FPL Pick'em League. Completely free to join up. Prizes on offer. Links in the description below. If you've enjoyed that video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on podcast, rate 5 stars and make sure to follow. I'll be doing a deadline stream on YouTube on Saturday morning, probably starting at 9 AM, so 2 hours ahead of the deadline. Make sure to join me for that. Otherwise, good luck in game week 2, and I'll catch you again for game week 3.